When I was young and immature, I didn't like to be around anyone in a wheelchair. People who used them made me feel awkward. Besides, what would I do if they asked me something? I didn't want to be placed in an embarrassing situation where, I might come across looking foolish. And so I avoided people who were, quote, confined to a wheelchair. But then I broke my neck. And suddenly there in the hospital, I was around all sorts of people in wheelchairs. I didn't think much about it because I was in bed for nearly a year while I went through various surgeries. But after a whole year of lying down, you know what? A wheelchair started to look pretty good. It was no longer unappealing. And I really was grateful for the day when I was strong enough to sit up in a wheelchair. I could finally look at life face on at a 90-degree angle rather than from a flat, horizontal position in bed. Powering my own wheelchair down the hallway, it just gave me this delicious sense of independence. And then there was the day I wheeled myself to the Taco Bell across the street from the hospital, and I returned with tacos in my backpack for my roommates. And I felt the exhilaration of freedom. I could actually do stuff in my wheelchair. I could wheel myself somewhere, even if it were Taco Bell. Now, yes, sure, I was still very depressed about my quadriplegia, but there were those occasional moments when my wheelchair was anything but confining. It really was the next best thing to having legs that walked. And I loved the sense of dignity and freedom that my wheelchair afforded me. I easily recall those days, especially when I have traveled overseas with Wheels for the World, as our teams provide a perfectly suited wheelchair for adults or children with disabilities. I watch sad faces become so happy. And for many of these people, it is the first time they have been able to look at life face on at a 90-degree angle. I recall a Romanian woman named Dadina, who was paralyzed in bed for 15 years due to a stroke. She lived in a small house with her aging mother, her only caregiver. But when our Wheels for the World team members sat Dadina up in her new wheelchair, an adult recliner that could accommodate her needs, this precious woman was actually speechless. When she was wheeled outside, she looked up and said, "Oh, thanks God for the blue sky." Everyone in the village turned out to greet the neighbor that they had not seen in years, and many committed to help Dadina whenever she needed it. For this poor Romanian woman, that wheelchair was her next best thing to having legs that walked. And the gift of mobility from Wheels for the World provided for her a freedom that she never thought possible, gave her dignity and respect from neighbors who no longer felt nervous or awkward around her. And it gave a chance for us to share the good news of Jesus Christ with everyone in the village who came out that day. Proverbs 14, I think it's verse 30 or 31 says, "Those who are kind to the needy honor God." So thank you for your kindness toward people like Dadina. It breaks my heart to think that so many have to live without the gift of mobility in back bedrooms. Yet when we provide a wheelchair, it proves that God cares about the real needs of people who, for the most part, are overlooked or neglected or ignored. So join me in cheering on our Wheels for the World teams as we provide thousands of wheelchairs and Bibles to those for whom a wheelchair, it really is the next best thing to having legs that walk.